We are talking Minnesota Vikings today with the foremost expert in all things purple. That is Mr. Luke Braun. What exactly are the Vikings doing right now? Is this a soft rebuild? Are they going for it? Are they rebuilding fully? Kirk Cousins in a walk year. What does that mean for the team now and going forward? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson, as always, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love the everydayers out there. Appreciate all of you. Make sure you are one. Subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL is where you can find him on Twitter, the host of Locked On Vikings. And hopefully, Luke, you can give us a little insight to what these Minnesota Vikings are doing. We've had a little series here, and we're starting with the hosts from teams that we can't figure out what they're doing, kind of feel like they're on the fence. And hopefully you could square that away for us because, Luke, it seems like a soft rebuild and a team that kind of played over their heads last year that I thought might be in for a regression. I'm worried we might see a massive regression for the Minnesota Vikings in 2023, yet they act like they're a team that's still in it in some ways.
For sure. Yeah. The Vikings are confusing to people because they aren't pushing one of the two buttons that everybody's familiar with. You know, everybody's familiar with the Rams style, let's go all in and mortgage the future to try to be really good right now. And then everybody's familiar with the let's blow it all up. And that's kind of the only two things that really make sense to the world. The Vikings are trying to strike a balance here. It makes more sense what they're doing if you look at each situation individually. Somebody like Dalvin Cook, they were never going to pay him $14 million. He was never going to take a pay cut. So that was always going to be a cut or a trade. Didn't get a trade partner. Nobody else wanted to pay that contract. And so there you have it. Adam Thielen, how much more do you think they can expect from Adam Thielen if they keep him at a price tag that would have been $19 million? So they approach him, say, hey, we're not going to pay you this much. We'll pay you some. We'll give you a pay cut and pay you something sensible, but we're not going to pay you this entire paycheck. And he probably ended up making more in Carolina than the Vikings would have paid him. So good for Adam Thielen. That probably worked out for him. And if you kind of go blow by blow through each of the situations that the Vikings have resolved this offseason, Darius Smith getting traded is kind of the same thing. It all makes sense if you look at it individually. And what they're trying to do is be as profitable as possible, decision to decision. They're not trying to go crazy on one side of a spectrum that is really kind of a false dichotomy anyways. And, I think the philosophy is you can't go broke making a profit. And that's the attempt. Now, have they made a profit on all of these? I would say probably not, but that's the intention. That's the try. And if they don't make a profit on a particular thing, we can criticize that accordingly. But yeah, they're trying to not go broke taking a profit. That's probably the best way to put it.
So, Luke, do you approve of that strategy? Would you have been stronger one way or the other? I hope our audience realizes, I know you do, that Jefferson, Addison, Darisaw, O'Neal, Hawkinson, the core offense is really young and or entering their prime. So, that situation I think is really favorable, and they'll extend Jefferson. And then I guess it's kind of a three-part question conversation. Where does that leave the quarterback of the future?
That is an interesting question. First off, thank you so much for mentioning Christian Darisaw. Nobody talks about him. He's a top 3 tackle in this league. It's insane. He's a god. It's unbelievable. When they were calling him, you'll know this, Brian. When they were calling him Baby Trent Williams, when Trent Williams was calling him Baby Trent Williams, we probably should have listened.
By the way, he's our starting tackle on our all NFC North squad. So we've been giving
we recognize
some love here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Podcast.
Awesome. Love it. And sorry, what was the actual question?
I don't even know if there was a question. I just want everyone to know that the offensive core is young and in its prime. Right. Do you approve of this message? And where does that leave quarterback going forward?
Right. Yeah. So there's like these offensively, there's these pieces to build around. Defensively, it's a little bit muddier where they're building toward because they sort of did this Fangio scheme thing with Ed Donatel for a year and then they're going onward. In terms of QB of the future, we don't know who that is. They're open to that guy being Kirk Cousins, but hey, as we speak, he is 35 years old. So eventually Father Time will come and you got to have your successor ready.
Could he actually get franchised again in his career?
I don't think so.
Okay. I was just say, wow.
He'll get a 1-year extension, but it will be like a specifically negotiated one if that's the case, or it could be longer. A lot of options are still open with Kirk Cousins, but they're not going to negotiate that before the season. Kirk Cousins has already said that publicly, that that's going to be something for next February or March. But the strategy at quarterback right now is let's try to draft someone. In this last draft, they tried really, really, really hard to go up and draft someone. Nothing came through, so nothing else, it was all behind the scenes. But they tried harder than you might think is reasonable to get up and draft somebody like Anthony Richardson or whatever, to get up in like way high in the draft. Didn't pan out, so they go with Kirk Cousins, and essentially it's Kirk Cousins is the quarterback till we get our next guy. Who is our next guy? Let's see what happens next April. Mm-hmm. Let's see what happens. If maybe we really like Kyler Murray or something crazy like that. Like there's options for who that could be. But yeah, if you are a rookie quarterback and you end up, showing up and here's Justin Jefferson, you got a great blindside protector in Christian Darrisaw, you've got TJ Hawkinson as a big body. Don't sleep on KJ Osborne. Like there's a lot to like about the offense. And with Kirk Cousins, who kind of, if he just needs to be a point guard, the offense can work. And we've seen that in other offenses be top 10 offenses when Kirk Cousins just needs to kind of just dish it out. So that's hopefully where we can be this year.
You brought up something really interesting with Kirk Cousins and the fact that the Vikings were trying to move up to find a guy. And if I'm not mistaken, there were reports that the Vikings in past drafts, like say 2021, had thoughts of trying to move up as well in the draft. And
that is an interesting one. They tried to move up for Justin Fields. It would have taken their 2022 first round pick, and so they decided not to do it. They said that was too rich for our blood. And the reason was that their room was split on whether or not Justin Fields or Kellen Mond was a better prospect. They're like, well, why would we trade up for Fields? Kellen Mond is there.
Why would I spend $60 on Titleist Pro V1 golf balls when I can go get the Kirkland golf ball? Right. That's the thought. Kellen Mond, he's not even on the roster anymore, is he?
No.
It'd be nice to make the team last year, and it was not close.
That was very quick. How they realized, oh, you know what? There's maybe a difference between Justin Fields and Kellen Mond here.
Obviously, he was a disaster, but it'd be nice to have a day 2 quarterback sitting there at least. I know Mond.
Yeah, well, they do have Jaron Hall, who kind of is going to fill that role. 5th round quarterback, so the expectations are fairly low. But I think the idea for him is, hey, if Kirk Cousins does walk, we don't want to pay him, and we end up drafting someone in 2024. Jaron Hall's the guy he competes with.
Okay, more on Kirk Cousins, because there's multiple angles of this. There's the future of Kirk Cousins. There's the current of Kirk Cousins and that young core we talked about in Minnesota. And I want to talk a little bit more about that draft class from 2023 as well with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from money line to over-unders to who you think is going to hit the first home run. You can build your own parlays. I love the website. I love how easy it is to use, both the app and the website at FanDuel. There's specials every single day, tons of sports. You think the NFL season hasn't gotten going? Oh, it's gotten going at FanDuel. You could bet on the Super Bowl champion. You could bet on your team's over-under win total. You could bet on rookies of the year. You could bet on number of receiving yards for certain stars around the league. And they've got weekly lines all the way up through week 17 already. All on an app, safe, secure, super easy to use, and you can get paid instantly. No better place to bet on all the Major League Baseball action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, Luke, the Kirk Cousins thing. So we talked about that young core. Do you think this team is as good as they were last year? Do you think that looking at, I believe they were -2 in point differential last year. Now, point differential isn't the be all end all, but it was a weird team. They won a lot of games, and it just felt like they weren't as good as what their record looked like. And even if you take each of those offseason deals you talked about, and they made the right prudent move with those deals, it's hard for me to look at this team and say they're better necessarily than they were a year before. Right. Where do you expect this team to go with those young, talented players that are the most important part of this team with Waukee or Kirk Cousins right now?
Yeah, my take is no. I've been saying on Locked On Vikings, the roster's worse. You have to be very, very, very generous to think, well, getting rid of Eric Kendricks and replacing him with Brian Asamoah, who will play better. Like, you have to make a big leap for that. And hey, Eric Kendricks didn't play that well last year. I think that was more of a coaching issue than an Eric Kendricks issue. I think he's going to kill it in Los Angeles. But if you want to say, hey, Eric Kendricks played poorly because of coaching, now we have better coaching and Brian Asamoah will outplay that. Therefore, the defense will get better. Defense is one of those things that is hard to predict year to year. A lot tends to change on defense year to year. So whatever, right? The biggest reason for optimism is probably on defense is probably Brian Flores himself. Changing to that scheme, Brian Flores is known for getting a lot out of fairly talent barren rosters. And the Vikings on defense are pretty talent barren. They have Harrison Smith kind of on his last leg, might be his last year in the league. You have Danielle Hunter, superstar. Kind of a fluid situation there right now with his contract. We're not sure if he's actually going to be a Viking when the season starts. Beyond that, you've got like Byron Murphy, decent corner, and then like dudes you've never heard of, guys that are second-year players. We're hoping to get a lot out of, like Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth haven't done anything. At inside linebacker, Brian Asamoah, second-year guy, Jordan Hicks, who was up and down. We'll go with last year. Defensive line, it's like Harrison Phillips and then like Dean Lowry. Like it's a talent barren roster. There are a couple of bright spots, but there's a lot of question marks, and you essentially need to rely on, all right, we're just going to send 7 every play and hope your quarterback falls apart. That's really the defensive thesis right now. But the roster is certainly worse. The way that things went down last year, and this is a lesson that Kevin O'Connell has talked about, kind of what he learned. They pressed a lot, kind of no matter the situation. When they would get behind a little bit in a game, and they got behind, 2-3 scores in games, they would end up winning because they would press and they would, get really, really aggressive, and they would be able to rattle off 3 touchdowns in a quarter and suddenly be back in this thing. But sometimes that would make it worse. You have no way to kind of slow down the tempo of the game. So you press and press and press, and suddenly it's an interception and another touch. And then now you're losing by 40. So there was no way for them to like lose by a little. It was either we're making the comeback or we're making it worse. I don't know how much O'Connell is going to commit to that again this year. I think he learned a little bit about, especially when you have a lead, about maybe not trying to run up the score and how about we run out the clock instead. But we'll see exactly how that goes and exactly if they keep that sort of prowess in close games. That, like, being good in close game situational football was a massive emphasis from the coaching staff. Like, it's not an accident. So we'll see if that continues, if it stays an emphasis, or if they emphasize something else, and then maybe you start having guys running out of bounds when they're not supposed to or whatever.
Luke, our fantasy folks need to know, is Alexander Mattison now the man? Is he getting a high percentage of the running back touches? Okay.
I've been going with 60% of the touches. He'll come out for a drive or two here and there. He'll rotate out with, there's a competition for RB2 between Kene Nwangwu and Ty Chandler. I would say in a redraft world, nobody else on the Vikings running back room is draftable, because we don't know if those guys are, all of those guys could theoretically get cut with a bad preseason. Sure. So, be careful of that. I would say right now, in the immediate wake of Dalvin Cook's release, Alexander Mattison probably got overrated in terms of a fantasy thing. Agreed. He's going to get about 60% of the snaps on a team that is not, they're going to run more, and fixing the run game is part of what they emphasized this offseason, getting guys like Josh Oliver, extending CJ Ham. they're going, I mean, they're pulling stuff out of the 49ers playbook. I think they're going to start stealing from Kyle Shanahan quite a bit. But that has that emphasis hopefully will make the run game more efficient, but I still don't think it's going to be a high volume running game. So if you're talking about Vikings, I think Justin Jefferson's the 1-1 and everybody else buyer beware. Alexander Mattison is probably a third, fourth round draftable guy. I prioritized wide receivers. Oh no, I need a back. Mattison will go, but everybody else, I would say, yeah, use caution.
Well, I'm going to stash Ty Chandler anyway, just in case. I like him.
Hey, good to stash. He could break out, but you're betting on him coming out and being a superstar, and he also.
And as we know in the NFL, every running back is one play away from jumping up the depth chart. And so interesting group there. I would talk a little bit more about the NFL draft, Luke, and the Vikings drafts recently, especially this year. But they've had some drafts where they've had, I don't know, like somewhere over under 100 day 3 draft picks on the roster. And you look at the roster, and I don't think a lot of them have made it. And that strategy, which in some cases I like, but you have to hit on some of those picks, and they just haven't had a lot of hits with those players. And I'm looking at the roster right now, and there's like 1 million undrafted free agents from this year that are battling for roster spots, compared to day 3 picks of years past. And then you look at some of the early picks, like 2022 draft, and a guy like Lewis Cine. So talk to me about some of the recent drafts. Are we going to see Lewis Cine be the guy because I was big on Lewis Cine. I thought he was a fantastic pick for the Vikings. I expected big things from him as a rookie and going forward in his NFL career. What do you expect from Lewis Cine? And are there any of those players that were later round picks that we look at the roster and we like, I don't know who that player is, but that might actually be a player for the Vikings?
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know if that's necessarily who they are anymore, honestly. That was more of a Rick Spielman thing. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been at the helm now for 2 drafts, and they've had a very normal day 3, less than usual on day 3, honestly. They've been trading up in day 3. So I don't think Kwesi has that same approach. Now, if you want to look at the one where they drafted 15 players, 2020, that draft was a home run.
6 7th round picks or something, right?
And if you look at like the contributors there, I mean, Justin Jefferson is one for sure. They got a starting guard in Ezra Cleveland. They had Cam Dantzler started for 3 years. I probably wouldn't call that one too much of a hit. Like if you go down that line all the way down to guys like Josh Metellus, who is also in that safety room. He's kind of the reason that Lewis Cine hasn't broken out the way we've thought. He's found and carved out an actual role on the defense as a 6th round pick. Bunch of guys in the 4th round, DJ Wanham, James Lynch that get in. That draft was an insane home run. If you want to look at more recent stuff. So Lewis Cine, he was still kind of learning the ropes and he was just developing. He was reading slow. Everybody in that defense was reading slow, but as a rookie, you're reading even slower. So he wasn't able to get on the field, gets hurt on special teams week 4. He has to spend time rehabbing. You don't get better at safety when you're rehabbing a compound fracture in your leg. So he comes back and he's in the same spot at the depth chart. And I don't know what, it feels like people didn't expect that. And I don't know why, but that's kind of where he's at. But the problem is Harrison Smith's still there. Cam Bynum's playing excellently. There's another kind of mid-round guy for you. There's Josh Metellus playing excellently. So it's kind of a crowded group, and that's not a big problem to have, especially in the Flores defense that loves to go with 3-4 safeties all the time. So he'll get on the field, he'll get his, and hopefully his role will expand. We also kind of didn't expect Harrison Smith to still be here. So that's putting additional pressure on things, but that's not a problem. The redundancy at safety is not a problem to have. His time will come. I think it just takes a little bit of patience.
So, Luke, we gave Christian Darrisaw some love, much needed. I think he's a superstar in the making. It sounds like you certainly agree. True or false? I'm sure your audience knows this. I don't think ours does, but this is my take on the guard tackle situation. I don't think our audience knows how good the Vikings tackles are. And I don't think they realize how bad the guards are, to be honest with you.
Well, so Brian O'Neill's an interesting one. He partially tore his Achilles in January. So there's an availability that we don't know who's actually going to play there, if he's going to be ready or not. They're pretty optimistic. And if he's not ready for week 1, hopefully he's ready soon. but that's a situation to monitor. In terms of the guard, I mean, Christian Darrisaw should be an all-pro tackle from here on out. In terms of the guards, Ezra Cleveland, I think he's gotten a little better every year, but he still has his moments where he totally falls apart. If you watch him during the playoff game last year against the Giants, he got his lunch eaten. It was horrible. But if you look at the other guard in that game, Ed Ingram, in my opinion, had a phenomenal game, and he has definitely gotten better. Look, rookie guard struggled out the gate, and I think he's slowly but surely getting better habits. We'll see what kind of leap they have. Guard, and this happened with Cleveland as well. Second year tends to be a leap for interior offensive linemen, and I think there's a good reason for that. The game slows down a little bit, you get better habits. So I'm not fully given up on them. It is very interesting that they brought back the entire offensive line with no serious competition at any of the positions. I think that is a fascinating decision, which is the nicest word that I can use for that.
Okay, fair enough.
Last one here, Luke. And speaking of competition, rookie first rounder Jordan Addison doesn't have a lot of competition for targets in that offense. Obviously Justin Jefferson is going to get every target available to him. But what have you seen early on in OTAs, spring practices from Jordan Addison? What do you expect from him as a rookie?
Yeah, so he has had a little hamstring thing, nothing serious, but he missed most of the spring program, so we haven't gotten to see much of him yet. He is currently in a battle for wide receiver 2 with KJ Osborne. My guess is that there will be a little bit of a difference in roles there. KJ Osborne is a little bit bigger, better blocker. Jordan Addison cannot block, or he couldn't block at USC. It was really a struggle. He's a skinny, wiry guy. When he puts his body in the way, he can kind of get steamrolled, and sometimes he doesn't even know where to put his body. So that's a thing he has to figure out before he can get, true 12 personnel stuff. And he might be sort of a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 thing. There'll be a rotation depending on the personnel package in the play and what's needed of the wide receivers. I am still very, very excited about Addison. I loved that pick. I loved him going into the draft. But right now he's in a 1-for-1 competition with KJ Osborne for wide receiver 2. We have not seen anything about how that will play out because he was hurt for the whole spring program.
Fantastic stuff. That is Luke Braun. You can find him on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. And of course, subscribe up to Locked On Vikings every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Luke, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for jumping on and really helping us figure out what this Vikings team is right now in 2023.
Of course. Anytime.
Okay, next we are going to break down. We're going to stay in the NFC North, and we've got a lot of pushback on Justin Fields and some of our hype we've been pushing out there. And I want to talk a little bit more actually about Kirk Cousins and what we think now, hearing Luke talk about this Vikings team. Next. Thanks once again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you want a little bit more of Williamson, make sure you check out Locked On Dynasty Football, featuring Mr. Matt Williamson, breaking down Dynasty fantasy every single day. Okay, with Kirk Cousins, it's such an interesting. So, I like how Luke framed it.
Yeah, I do too.
About how if you look at each individual move by the Vikings, yes, they lost some names, they lost some veteran players, and maybe they're not as good of a football team. Excuse me, but each move by itself was a prudent move. It was a smart move on its own.
Yeah.
It's really good
Standalone.
move.
Yeah.
They're not trying to tear it down. They're not trying to rebuild, but they're not going all in and making, crazy decisions, throwing first round picks at veterans. And they're trying to make each decision the correct decision as you go. And that's, in the long run, probably a pretty good strategy, except that you are already in that purgatory area, with Kirk Cousins and the team and how good you're going to be. And then with a walk year of Kirk Cousins, I do find it interesting that they've been trying to trade up for quarterbacks, because now you look at this year with Kirk Cousins, they're probably too good of a team to be drafting in the top 5-10 to get one of those top quarterbacks. So again, they're going to be sitting there now without Kirk Cousins, as if he does walk, that is, in the offseason, they'll be sitting there without Kirk Cousins and then forced to go get a quarterback. Or sit back and not be able to get a quarterback again, and then they have whoever is available to them. Maybe they could do it again with with Kirk Cousins. I have a hard time believing Kirk Cousins will settle for a 1-year deal. I think he's going to get paid. I think he's going to get paid more than what Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo got this year. So it's hard to picture what the path forward is for the Vikings unless they're bad enough to go get one of those top picks. And so that almost becomes a 2025 draft pick unless they throw a bunch of future picks in to try to move up to get a guy in this offseason. If Kirk Cousins does walk, which it seems like that's where it's going.
I agree with all that. And, I often talk about building a very comfortable nest for a rookie quarterback. And I think this would be a great landing spot. You get to throw to Justin Jefferson. Addison would be in his second year. You got tackles, you have somewhat of a running game. However, if, it sounds like it's pretty obvious the last 2 drafts, they've tried to get a quarterback and there's only so many to go around, or you're not going to pay the Fields price or whatever it is. Fair enough. And if it does take 2 years until the college quarterback right now is your starter and it costs you a future first to move from 18 to 6, you know what I mean? Or something like that, because you ended up winning the division or winning 7 or 8 games again. Now, all of a sudden, Hawkinson's 30 and, now the nest is old. You know what I mean? It's a fine line they're playing there.
I wonder if they haven't had it to do over again. Lewis Cine was that extra first-round pick that they would have given up to go get Justin Fields. I wonder if they would have done it. But then that would have meant they would have spent their first rounder on Fields instead of Darisaw. And Darisaw ended up being a really good player for them.
Right.
So, it's
Darisaw might have more value than Fields. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? Right.
That's a perfect segue because if Fields hits, he's as valuable as you get, right?
Sure.
A young superstar quarterback is the most valuable thing you could possibly have. And we've gotten some pushback, Matt, on our love for, or at least my love for Fields. And I think you you feel similarly to where I do, where it's like we project another jump in play from Fields, and we know exactly what he has to work on. It's not a mystery. But some people are like, nope, he's terrible. He's blind. He's a blind man, cannot read defenses. It will never be. He's a runner, and that's it. Justin Fields is not a good quarterback, inaccurate, all these things. He's terrible. He will always be terrible. So I've gotten a lot of that feedback from some of our recent shows, our all NFC North team, where we picked him as our quarterback, just trying to project it out and trying to have the best possible quarterback. And we know that there's a scenario where Fields doesn't continue to develop and doesn't become the quarterback that the Bears hope he is. Do you think we are overvaluing the raw tools in what Justin Fields can be in the NFL, Matt?
Here's my 2-minute synopsis on the situation. Is Fields coming out of Ohio State was my clear number 2 quarterback in that class. And I often said before he entered the league, most years, or maybe half the years, he would be the number 1. He's just not ahead of Lawrence. Okay, I mean, I'm not going out on a crazy limb saying Lawrence was the one, of course. Now, I think you have to analyze Fields' rookie year. It was as dysfunctional of an offense with nothing around him as there's been in recent years. And they all get fired, and a new group comes in. And I adore Luke Getsy. It's a personal thing. He was our quarterback at Pitt. He followed us to Akron. Luke's the man. He's a Pittsburgh dude. I'm rooting for him. But I think early on, the Getsy-Fields combination didn't quite get each other last year. And there wasn't much talent around them either. But I think they figured each other out often as rookie coach quarterback do. As the season gets on, it got better. And I still think Fields is an accurate enough passer. I think there is this goes back to Stroud this year. I think there is something about Ohio State quarterbacks not translating to the NFL because their life is very easy at the Ohio State level, throwing to Smith-Njigba, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think his accuracy is way underrated now, but I might have overrated it then just because he has a lot of clean pockets and didn't have to work as hard as some young quarterbacks at the college level. But if he's a stock, I am buying Fields because the beauty too, as everyone knows, this minute, even if he's a 50% passer, and this is an Anthony Richardson thing, he's going to be hard to play against now. You know what I mean? In the meantime, does the next step come? We'll see.
And we've seen with multiple quarterbacks around the league getting more talent around him, Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. You see how when you're that gifted physically and you're that willing to put in work, and then you put the talent around him at wide receiver. Now that that excuse is not going to be there for Justin Fields in 2023. That's when things really start to come together. So second year in that scheme, I'm still bullish on it. And I get what people say. I've heard some people talk about inaccuracy. Justin Fields is really accurate. That's one thing he has. Like, he can make throws. Now, that short to intermediate area is where he needs to get better. And I don't think it's a pure accuracy thing. I think it's just, get your feet lined up. It's more of a technique thing. It's a decision thing. It's not an accuracy thing. So a quarterback with this much arm talent, accuracy, arm strength, this much athleticism, if he's wired in a way that he's legitimately trying to get better, and he was recruited by Harvard, so he's not a dummy either. So there's too much. I can't think of a quarterback that had that much going for him that wasn't like off doing crazy stuff in the offseason. Does he like spend all? Does he not look at the playbook? Is he at the strip club? Is he drinking scissor in his free time like Jamarcus Russell? Like what is the thing that hold him from getting there? And that's, I can't think of a quarterback that talented that didn't eventually get there, and that's why I'm excited about Justin Fields.
I agree with all that. And if we don't have this conversation a year from now saying, oh, he's the man, or if there's still questions, then I'm worried, but this to me is the crossroad year. There's enough around him. You mentioned Hurts getting AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, etc. Josh Allen was abysmal his first year or two. Then you give him Stephon Diggs, it's a team game. People forget that sometimes. I mean, he has not had much around him during those first two seasons at all. I mean, they would have killed for Darnell Mooney last year.
And what was the big breakout year for both those quarterbacks? It was year 3.
Right.
All right, we'll see. It's going to be fun. The NFC North, I can't wait how this looks. And obviously, there's just Jordan Love now, the starting quarterback in Green Bay, without Aaron Rodgers in the division anymore. So the division's up for grabs. The Detroit Lions might be one of the more interesting teams in the NFL. And so I can't wait for the NFC North and how this all ends up looking and how it all shakes out. It's going to be a really fun division in 2023. Thanks again to Luke Braun for joining us here. Make sure you're subscribed up to Peacock and Williamson on YouTube, everywhere you get your podcasts, and your team is covered right here, no matter the sport, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Matt and I back tomorrow, mailbag style. Get those questions in on the YouTube comments or at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Talk to you then right here, Peacock and Williamson.